Hi, welcome to the Growth Collective. Really excited to have you guys here today. Really appreciate you joining us for episode number, I believe this is number 6. Today's guest, I'm very excited to have with us. It's Cesar Keller, I beg your pardon, trying to make him Irish when he's not. Uh, Cesar is the CEO and founder of Parux, design and digital design and development operation out of St. Louis. He's been there for 34 years now. Just to give a bit of background on Cesar, he's got a multidisciplined series of experiences. He actually started out in engineering and development and coding, and has since, kind of evolved into more of the development, design, and production lead within Parux. Really interestingly, Cesar has started and founded and managed 4 different companies. And again, right now he's with Parux. They're doing fantastic work. We're going to learn a lot about them today. If I were to summarize kind of where Cesar comes from, just having had these conversations, he's really looking for a mutually beneficial interaction with his clients. And we'll talk about a lot of that today because it has a lot to do with the content. So, Cesar, very nice to have you here. Excited to hear what you've got to say. And welcome to the Growth Collective.
Dan, thank you so much for having me. I've been excited to have this conversation and looking forward to it. And hopefully we'll give the audience some value.
For sure. Maybe we'll just start off. Well, let me first of all make a PSA. If any participants have questions, if you'd like us to dig into something specific, just post a comment and we'll try to work it into the conversation as we go along. But as far as kicking off today, Cesar, maybe we just do a quick level set on what is digital product development. I know a lot of people can interpret things to be different. So let's be clear with what that is in your world and, a little bit of how Parux goes about it.
Sure. We kind of define ourselves as the digital product studio. And what that entails is imagine if people have ideas for how software can help run operations. And we've all heard and seen ideas of look at this mobile app, or look at this online marketplace, or look at the SaaS-based platform where you subscribe to the software and you can use the software through your browser. Obviously, that's all custom software, but it's got that product-centric kind of mentality in that we want that software to be scalable. So there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on it. Usability is going to be high. The design's got to be right. The performance has to be right. So although we do dabble in building custom software for companies as IP or just the company's going to use it, we really love participating in products where we're going to launch that platform and it's going to be sold to the masses inside of an industry. So when you think about that, those examples of the marketplaces, the mobile apps, and the web software as a SaaS platform, that's what we love designing and building.
Okay, so the complete solution, not just a web presence or some UI components.
That is correct. Although we're highly collaborative, sometimes we just get brought in like, listen, we have an amazing engineering team, but we're lacking on UX UI skills and some analyst skills or innovation management. We pick and choose, or vice versa. They can have amazing design teams, but they lack the engineering capability. So we just kind of step in wherever is needed to fill the gaps, or we can come in from A to Z and take on the entire project as an extension of their team.
Right. And I think, what was so interesting about having you on this broadcast is our audience is typically early stage in the go-to-market mode. I think quite frequently, founders are doing a lot of services initially. Those services eventually evolve is maybe the right word, evolve to becoming systematized with a human interaction required via a UI. So Parux is the company that can sort of help that agency get from service to actual automated technology, and hopefully creating the assets that put you in position to function more as a SaaS or technology group.
That's exactly correct. Call it productizing your IP or your process or your services, or adding technology as an adjacent piece to the services that you deliver as well.
Okay. Well, being where I'm at Amplify, I can definitely see how that fits and what the opportunity is. And, when you're doing a bootstrap, you definitely want to be progressive and deliberate before you, lay down building a complete ERP or HR system. So good context, good sort of foundational information for us to get started with here. Let me, if I could, just ask a couple of questions and sort of get your insights on the topic that we're after here, which is, sort of optimizing that digital production. As far as, your 30 plus years in the industry, what is, in your experience, the most common misconception about these digital products and innovating them and developing them and designing and actually executing on them?
Sure. If I had to give you one major theme, I think it's very similar to a lot of businesses out there or business-minded thinking people, and that is ideas are great, but it's the execution that separates the people that actually get the success. And if I gave you maybe three sublines or three stories to back up the theme of execution, I think what we were talking about is number one, it takes a village to build some of these successful things. It can't just be one-sided. Let's say a lot of people think, hey, I just need some really smart programmers. It takes a lot more than programmers to build some of these digital products to be successful. So we can dive into what a cross-functional team is all about. The second kind of sub-story or plot would be, it's got to be user-centric, meaning a lot of people are super excited. They have the money, they have the budget, they know they're wanting to do this, and they are subject matter experts. They've been in that industry, but for whatever reason, they want to skip dealing with the customer or interviewing the customer or falling in love with the problem. They have assumptions about what the problem is. And what we end up doing for those people, if they don't allow us to, is we end up building software that they love or that they like or that they think is the best. But when they go to resell it, the masses come back and go, nope, that's not what we want. So you got to get that customer involved. That customer-centric piece is very, very critical. And the last one is agility and speed.
Back to the earlier point, Cesar, I can see it in my own business. I kind of know what the use case is, but I don't think in terms of what the customer journey is going to be like. And what you're saying is, being able to meld those two together is a key portion of, successfully developing something that's not just meeting the needs, but enjoyable to work with from a customer perspective.
Right. I mean, it boils down to business. Success is measured in sometimes revenue, right? Especially whether you want to get funding, whether you want to reinvest a little bit more into it. When you're talking to whether it's VCs or private equity companies, they're looking for two things: traction and momentum. And if you can't show sales and you can't show users, it's going to be really, really hard for you to grow in certain aspects. Well, where does that come from? Well, number one, it's you have to deliver value to those customers. And that value, if it's really, really great, people will go, wow, they're solving a pain point. I really like the experience. Here's my money. Just take my money, right? But if you cannot deliver that value, that's where the problems start. Now, how do you uncover that value? Well, if you've ignored the customer in all your research and then ignored them as you're building, testing, prototyping, and iterating, by the time you get to the end, you're about to launch. What if you launch it and it's a big miss? Don't you want to capture that at the beginning of all your process?
Right.
So you can have the smartest engineers in the world building amazing technology, but if that experience is flawed and if it doesn't capture their value points, you're still not going to generate that traction and momentum. So we like to make sure we push that envelope as early as we can and iterate through the entire process from A to Z.
Got it. And, with respect to that, what are the most common mistakes you see your stakeholders making as they go about this process as far as designing and building these solutions? Are they too focused on the use case? What are the common pitfalls?
Yeah, there's been two big studies that I really like to share with people. So it's actual data, and they highlight some percentages. One of those studies is the latest study that MIT put together through MIT-X, which is a framework on product innovation. And basically, they say that these three themes combined equal this percentage for failure. And that is no market need, ignored customers, and unfriendly design. Those three put together as a category is equal to 42% of why product innovations failed. There's another category that says you either hired the wrong team or competition beat you to the market, and that's 23%. So just if you combine those two, you're close to 2/3 of why most companies fail when innovating on digital products. So those two, we can kind of extrapolate that. And that's why I was saying the main theme is, wow, if you don't pay attention to the customers, if you don't fall in love with the problem and truly understand their pain, now you're just making assumptions. And a lot of people are excited. Hey, I have the money. I have the budget. We've kind of done this before, or I'm an expert in this field. They're so enthusiastic to just get started to design and build a solution, and that there's nothing wrong with that excitement. That's awesome.
Mhm.
But it's almost like you have to design with your assumptions, but prove with the customer that you're doing it the right way. And that
Right.
gets you into that much better traction and momentum to get the ball rolling when it really matters.
Yeah, you use the word fail, and I was like, I wonder what failure is. I don't think failure really relates to the system functioning and being operational so much as customer uptake and customer journey, being a positive one. Is that your sort of definition of success?
That's one of the main metrics, right? Like you can build some awesome stuff, you can share it with the world, and people are like, that's pretty cool. And no one says anything bad to you, right? It's like, okay, go get them. But over time, it's like, man, we're not signing anyone up. No one's taking advantage of this service. Why? And that why can have all these categories of why people are not buying. And the number one is you ignored them, or you made it unfriendly, or they don't understand what you're doing or what the market need is. So the perceived value is just completely missing.
Yeah, but Parux really depends on the client to define that. You're just trying to translate the thought and the business service that's trying to be provided into the most positive interactive experience that's possible systematically. Is that
If
a fair way to put it?
That is a fair way to, if they're coming to us to design and build it because they don't have, let's say, the team to put it together, that
Right.
is definitely the case. Sometimes companies come to us because they know that we leverage these frameworks. We've been doing a lot of product development for a lot of companies. We actually say, can you allow us to participate during the R&D? Can we do user research? Can we talk to potential customers? Can we,
Okay.
get all stakeholders involved? And that's more on the pre-production side, kind of like before the major, let's do this.
You
We
do
can
get
assist them with that as well.
Yeah, you do get involved with not just design, but market need and functional requirements as far as addressing the pain point. That's
That is correct. I'll say on the startups, on the smaller companies, when you're talking about maybe startups and scale ups, sometimes there's a little bit of immaturity or the first time that they're doing this. So we're glad to help them there. Once you start getting to larger organizations like mid-market or corporate enterprise level, they're a little bit more mature in how they do their research. And they would provide some of that information like you were saying to us. And then we just collaborate. So it really just comes into the context of who we're working with.
I see. And I keep thinking of this in my own context. It's interesting to me that you're using a lot of the same terms and terminology, I guess, that somebody going to market would use in describing, basically having a successful business proposition. And you're using it in a different context. Those things have to be there and have to be present but you're delivering on the back end, not just defining them on the front end. So whatever that brand promise is, it's your job to make sure that those promises are met and kept, and done in the most sort of cohesive, enjoyable way.
Yeah, that's a really great observation. I mean, one of another mistake that I see is we'll worry about sales and marketing strategies after the product is built. Let's just build it. And to me, what you're saying is there's got to be a collaboration. If the product teams and engineering teams and designers are really thinking through and have all access of this R&D of here's why we're building it, here's why these workflows are going to work, here's why we're delivering value, why can't that be shared with the product team, with the marketing and sales up front, so that you can start doing whatever you need to do to gain traction ahead of time, right? You can start thinking about pre-orders. You can start trying to get some sales ahead of time, or some letters of intent, or sharing that with potential future investors, right?
Right.
So
Wait,
there is a little bit of that, how can we prepare for the sales aspect and the operations and support by starting a little bit earlier and not kind of passing the baton in silos?
well, I might be overstating the case, but if you haven't done business validation, idea validation, uh, with the marketplace, even if it's friends and family or people in the industry, that would seem like a huge misstep before you start developing. Do you actually experience that with some of your clients?
Unfortunately, yes. A lot of times they come to us. Sorry, something triggered my Siri there before we
Siri
start
wants to help.
booming some music. Yeah, a lot of the times they come to us and say, we started a little too early. We really didn't do the research, and we spent some funds with the wrong engineering team that just took all our money, and they programmed a whole bunch of stuff, but nothing works the way that we wanted it to, or our clients are not resonating with it, and we're having challenges with sales. So it does happen, unfortunately. And again, it's that excitement and that enthusiasm and those assumptions that get people into that trap of starting a little too soon before getting their ducks in a row.
And to just kind of carry through on that same point, you have the R&D process, the collaborative process, you do the development, you deliver a solution, it goes to market. There's a post-production process. Do you guys stay involved in that as well, just to see what sort of feedback is coming back? Are you involved in surveys, usability, anything along those lines? Because it seems like just the first delivery is just step one as far as the technology goes.
Yeah, launching the product is always what I call the prologue, right? It's a lot of work, don't get me wrong, and it's a very important part of the book. But chapter one is, all right, let's make impact in this world and let's get some users. And as anyone in the life cycle of a product will tell you, it's iterative, right? Just because you got to this point doesn't mean that you did everything you could. We all have budgets, we all have time limitations, and you got to get something to market. So there's a constant evolution of what the product can be. So we get involved in maintenance, we get involved in triaging all the backlog that didn't get done. We think through new innovations, integrations with other pieces of software, customer support, whatever it takes to make them successful.
Yeah. And then you go to sort of an agile model where you're just iterating on the first deliverable. It's not to get too technical, but just
we follow agile methodologies from the very beginning, just from a cost mitigation perspective. A lot of times when I'm first engaged with a lot of prospects, it's always about, this is the best way based on a lot of data that's out there, but you have to be careful how you control those budgets and how much you spend. Because obviously if you do it the wrong way, it can be a lot of money that you put up front to not get a return quickly. So what are the risks? And it's not just about how much you're spending, right? Again, who are you hiring? Do they have the right collective experience? I think earlier we were talking about, it's not just engineers, it's a collective group of people.
Right.
The other thing is the technology that you choose. There's so many different levels of technology that you can use. Some of them can be less costly than others, but it's going to cap you. Other technology can be amazing, but it can be super expensive and very difficult to manage and maintain. So what's that Goldilocks that fits you into the right model so you can evolve and upgrade over time without costing you so much? So that's where the agility and speed comes in. So you got to make a lot of decisions based on technical debt, which means how much do we want to do now versus how much do we want to do later, but
Right.
provide the best experience possible.
Yeah.
Because if you sit there and try to build a perfect system before you launch it, you're never going to launch it, and competition is going to beat you, or it's
Right.
going to catch up to you, right?
Yeah.
So it's just a lot of these agile decisions that you have to be careful to make.
Yeah. You're kind of dealing with that saying, perfection is the enemy of good,
That's right.
where you do have to get it out. And one of our viewers, Gerald, talked about, and he and I both worked within the same software company. So we kind of saw this way back when. You have to sort of make those cuts and judgments on future releases, what the plan is, getting users formally involved in a forum. And you would have to be sort of right in the middle of that as a resource for their team. Is that also part of the model? So that's kind of getting into ongoing.
That's right. And that's why no matter what the relationship is, we try to be a partner to all of our clients. We recognize that we're just a vendor, but there are some clients that have come back to us and say, we absolutely love working with you. And guess what? We don't want to manage a team and we don't want to hire people. We just want to partner up with you. So sometimes there's opportunities for equity, but we treat all our clients like they're our partner, because ultimately we can deliver something on time, on budget, and per spec. Does that guarantee that they're going to be successful? And I think we all know the answer is no.
You got to be in their business.
That's right. They have to get sales. They got to get repeat customers. We have to control churn. We have to deliver great customer support. We got to make sure you have a great marketing system. And that way, now the people start coming. I think there's a famous quote from a movie, right? Build it and they will come. We know that that's not the case. So
only that easy.
Yeah, that's where you got to have that partnership mentality if you want to have good retention with your customers at this level.
Okay. Wow. This is great stuff, Cesar. I could geek out on a lot of development type discussion, but in the interest of time, the title of the session is, the 3 recommendations for having a successful digital loss. So, or digital development delivery. So maybe we should shift over into that. What are sort of your key recommendations as far as doing this right? We've touched on a lot of the elements of it. But when you get started, I'm a founder and trying to do something, what are the top 3 things that you're going to say, hey, Dan, if you want this to go well, let's at least at a minimum focus on these 3 items.
Sure. And I think we've talked about it in general so far. So hopefully these are not new, but I'll go into a little bit more detail. So I'd say that the first thing is have a serious R&D phase, what we call pre-production. Don't skip that phase. That will hurt, right? The theme that we like to say is fall in love with the problem, because the more you fall in love with the problem, you really start to build true empathy for, wow, this is the pain that these people are feeling. What's the best way to solve that pain? And let's not just jump to conclusions. Let's really, really study the problem. And then once we've done that formally, let's go validate that is the problem and make sure that, hey, yeah, if we actually solve this problem right, we have this whole market to go to.
Okay.
A sub-theme of that is kind of there's intuition that you have. And like I said, we can be a part of an industry. We can have subject matter experts that have their opinions. I like to follow true data. What are the actual needs-based R&D? That's where it's at, because you can have true data on these are the pain points. This is why. This is the expectation of performance. This is the expectation of the user experience. Can we actually do that, right?
Are you doing that? Are you looking for that for just sort of use case validation?
That's exactly right. The more, obviously, R&D can help you with prototyping and design and kind of what the solution is, but validation is key, right? Because that's what shortcuts your life cycle of traction and momentum and sales. The more you can hit them with that value prop, and the more that they're like, wow, this actually solves my problem, and it ticks all the boxes, it helps with the sales piece. Now, the second piece is, well, you got to come up with a budget. You got to come up with the timeline, and you got to deliver something. You can't, again, remember the enemy of we don't want perfect. We just want something to get going.
Right.
Unfortunately, a lot of people use the term MVP, minimal viable product. And unfortunately, what I see, my insights in my 20 plus years of doing this is they have a budget. I'm going to make up a budget. Let's say you and I had $300,000 to do something. Well, they go, well, we're going to do the best we can do for $300,000. Let's go. Instead of follow up with the problem, figure out what the needs are, and then backwards estimate, can we deliver what the basic minimums are for 300,000? Notice that that's a totally different thing. So I see a lot of people trying to estimate what version 1 of a product is without truly delivering a full solution. And that hurts because as people start looking at your stuff, they're like, well, this kind of solves my pain, but you didn't think about this, and this.
Right. But you are dealing with budgets, right? You're not unconstrained.
That's right. But that's why I always think it's better if you have a really good R&D phase that tells you and educates you on what this might be. Then you're at a good point where you can have a go, no go decision. It's not the right time. We don't have the right team. We don't have the right resources. We really need to investigate this a little bit more instead of just diving in with your 300,000. And obviously you're risking 300,000.
Wow.
So those are the little elements that I see on the pre-production side for that topic.
Yeah, that's got to put you in some interesting conversations where you have to be brutally honest, maybe at the expense of the project overall.
We've actually turned down a lot of projects that the idea was kind of good and whatnot, but once we commit and once I say our team can build this and we can hit our numbers and we can do the best, even with unknowns, we're fully committing. But if we don't have all the information, it can be a kind of trap. And that's one of the things I hate. There's a lot of agencies in the industry. They're just looking for the business. They'll give you a fixed bid without knowing everything. And then when trying to pay the piper, they're like, you did not complete, this is not working, and you spent all our money. Why did this happen? It's because you didn't do enough research. So that's the gut-wrenching thing. And this isn't just organizations investing. Sometimes people come to us with their life savings or they're a super successful executive, and they do want to impact the world, and they want to invest their own money, right? Now you're talking about people's life savings. So it's a big, mature decision to turn down business if you don't have all your ducks in a row.
Well, it seems to me, not to get off the tracks, but you could have a great spec, you could have a great R&D process, and Parux could find themselves saying, I don't think that the business proposition here is, worthwhile. So you find yourself maybe having to tell somebody their baby is ugly, which is never a good thing. How do you deal with that situation? Has to happen.
Happens all the time. I'd say some of the biggest reasons are the specs are incomplete because they haven't really truly thought about the business model, or specs are incomplete because the people that are putting this initiative together, this is their first time ever trying to productize anything digitally. So they're learning as they go. And they might have false expectations because they can get, let's say, 5 different bids. And it's apples, oranges, bananas, strawberries. Like one quote was 100 grand, another quote was 1.5 million. And they're like, kind of sounds all the same to me. And so what happens, right? Which kind of leads me to you asked me for 3 points. The second point is picking the right team. We've all heard of offshore teams. We've heard of nearshore teams here local in the States, hybrids of those teams. Like, who do you trust to build this? And maybe it's not just location, but the talent. I think I started this early in our conversation. A lot of people think that building products is just IT based, but that's no longer the case. There's a lot of psychology, there's a lot of support, there's a lot of R&D, analysts, data, security. It's a variety of folks that need to all come together, and they can't work in silos. Because if you work in a silo and pass the baton and work in the silo and pass, it's kind of like playing that monkey game where it's like you whisper in someone's ear and then it goes through the room. By the time it gets to the end, the message gets all distorted.
Yeah.
It's the same premise, right? You need a cross-functional team that respects each other, and everyone comes together and they only care about one thing, which is how do we help the end user that's going to use this platform?
Right. And
Best
just
idea wins. Not, oh, you're a designer, you don't know how to program. Oh, you're an analyst, your data's wrong. Or you're an engineer, you picked the wrong technology. It's not pointing fingers, it's coming together and everyone sharing their experience, that holistic background.
Best idea wins. Um, as far as your own practical experience, can you have dev groups located in remote locations, or do they all need to be together so that they can interact and collaborate, or is it just depend on the nature of the project?
Great observation. I've learned that the best of the best teams that truly come together, it's all about culture. You have the right culture, you have the right process, and you have the right talent. It does not matter where you are in the geographical world. These teams can come together, but they've got to have a strong leadership is the big thing. So the leadership aspect of innovation, to keep all those really talented people and egos together and moving things forward in an organized fashion, that's where you need to have frameworks, and you need to have, this is our process, and everyone needs to truly participate in that process instead of like the passing of the baton, like I was telling you. Now, obviously, the more centric those teams are, I think that can help, especially with language barriers, depending on the context of where in the world this project is and where it's going to launch. But for the most part, I think it's all about talent and finding the right talent to come in together with the right culture.
Yeah, that leads to another question or two. As far as securing the talent, is that something you as the development shop can have a mixture of outsourced talent as well as your own FTE type staff, or does that not really work in a real world?
I try to find the best holistic team, which means I'm looking for talent. I'm looking for being humble. When you don't know something, raise your hand. And I'm looking for problem solvers, meaning I don't know how that's done, because sometimes we get asked to do stuff that's never been done. So it's
Right.
about how creative can your mind be? And the last thing is how collaborative you can be. Can you respect people from all disciplines trying to work and fall in love with the problem before giving a solution?
Mhm.
And if I need somebody and they're not in my backyard, I don't care if, we're in St. Louis. I don't care if they're in California. I don't care if they're in Mexico. I don't care if they're in Poland. It's, can we find people that we can trust? Now, finding the people is the tough part.
Yeah,
And then fitting them into your process and getting them engaged. Yes, those are some challenges, but that can be overcome more easily than what I started describing.
Okay. I've got another question, and feel free to say, hey, Dan, that's another broadcast for another day. But, we're reading so much, and obviously Amplify is very focused on, trying to tap in and utilize AI tools. AI is changing the way coding is executed, as well as how it's QA'd, packaged, and delivered. What impacts are you seeing in that today? Or is it too early to really lean in on making use of some of this new technology?
Well, AI, that can definitely be its own broadcast, but I'll give you some highlights.
Yeah, just the tool sets that are available.
Sure. So number one, AI can help all aspects of product innovation, from R&D to UX, UI, and design to writing, to obviously coding itself, technologies and integrations being used. So it's a multifaceted set of tools. That's the first and foremost thing.
Right.
I would say one of the impacts that I was learning at through some education and certifications is, well, if you're going to implement AI, you better make sure that you have your policies ready to go. You really need to create a framework for how you leverage AI. And you have to be an advocate for transparency on, this is where we're using AI and this is how. The other aspect that a lot of people are kind of questioning is the legality of it, right?
Yeah, if you're getting
Not
it.
all of us read the fine print of, I'm going to use this Copilot tool, or I'm going to use this AI technology and it's going to help me. Well, if you don't read the fine print, who owns that? And I think legal is kind of catching up to it because technology is just moving so fast. That's why thinking about the policies, thinking about the ethics, and thinking about how to communicate those transparencies so that if something happens, you at least have a ledger or a log of,
Yes, sure. I mean,
this
that's
is where things diverted, you know? And
does Parux make use of any technologies, as far as any of your dev procedures, QA procedures, even converting, maybe you're converting an iOS version over to something else. There's a lot of tech out there. Have you guys dipped into any of it, or you just
yeah, in a variety of ways. So obviously, the simplest way to leverage AI is starting with sales and marketing kind of a thing. And then moving on to, instead of doing one-on-one studies, you can crowdsource, and there's ways to leverage AI and UX for user experience.
Yeah,
Obviously, the technology lends itself to, can I use AI to help me code things or prototype things? The prototyping world is great for AI. So it's just a variety. And then actually building ML models and AI models, algorithms are probably the most basic senses of sorts of how to start thinking about AI technology. The challenge is your data sets and how you really clean your data. There needs to be a preparation and organization of leveraging your data. And so a lot of companies have to go through that process first to really take advantage of it. But the simple use case is professionals and experts, this is the tolerance that they think. Well, why don't you provide some AI and ML to, is that the right tolerance, or is it tighter, or is it wider spread? Like, leverage technology to help you with those algorithms. So yeah, it's widespread on how you can use it. I always err on the side of being careful. But I think everyone's going to eventually take advantage of that to some degree.
yeah,
And for
yeah.
companies that are not, they're just going to fall behind.
But as far as your delivery, it sounds to me like I would kind of summarize your comments by saying you're taking it, you're trying it, you're checking it, you're testing it, and when you have a good reaction, great. Let's make that part of our process. When you have a not so great reaction, you say, okay, we'll save that one for another day. Is that a fair characterization?
That's a fair characterization.
Okay. And then I know that this is the deep end of the pool, but to me, it's so interesting. If I'm, a hotshot Python programming expert, am I going to even need to be a hotshot Python programmer in 2 to 3 years, or am I going to be looking for the person who has a very well organized process flow as opposed to their great coder?
I've had these debates and discussions with a lot of people, and I think technology will eventually get to the point where it's like, wow, look at what this can do compared to a human being. However, I'd say for the next 10, 15 years, having really great, talented people that are critical thinkers and problem solvers to drive and manage the technology is always going to be best. Those
for sure. You need that.
who have the but yes, eventually
You might not be a coder though, so
it might be different, right? It might be like, instead of writing lines of code, you're kind of like a manager that's reviewing, accepting.
you're probably very good at writing prompts, right?
Right. So there's going to be an evolution, and I can't predict what it's going to be. But here's the thing: if clients knew exactly what they wanted every single time, then you can probably have some fun with it. But they're still trying to figure it out. So to give a perfect prompt, you need to know exactly what you want, and that's a part of the thing about being human, right? We're evolving, we're iterating, and we're doing it in stages to deliver that. No one delivers the perfect product on day one. It takes years, right? So I think it's just going to enhance that process, and delivery is going to speed up over time, which is quite exciting.
Okay, great. Well, we're up against it, Cesar. So I've got sort of in my notes that the top three are number one, have effective R&D sessions and validate, the design and the process with the team, so that they have a business appreciation for what's basically the objective, not just, hey, code this for me. Number two, protocol version planning based on the budget, and be smart about that. Don't just be trying to squeeze as much as you can out of your budget. Let's get the actual core componentry nailed before we even go to market. If we've got budget limitations, then maybe you need to pause rather than put out something that's substandard. And then picking the right team. I think that's key. And I think how you do it, how you model it, how you price it is probably a huge driver of your business, making the right selections. And I think we just covered probably way too much on how that's going to change in the next couple of years, but it's definitely going to.
It's been exciting. Hopefully that gives a little bit of the insights of what we do on a day-to-day basis, but we're having fun with it. And if anyone in the audience has questions, comments, or wants to get back to us, feel free to reach out or visit Parux.com.
Cesar, is that the best way, just to go to Parux.com, or is it your LinkedIn, or?
You can find me on LinkedIn, just Cesar Keller. So that's an easy search. But if you want to reach out to me directly via email, it's just Cesar@Parux.com.
All right, great. Well, any of our audience out there that's looking at projects or wraparounds or even data analysis, right? That's not outside of the purview of Parux. Parux is a great provider for this. I've gotten to know Cesar over the last several months, and I can definitely vouch for his ability to deliver and keep a tight timetable and basically do what he says he's going to do, which I don't know what else you can ask for in this day and age. So thanks so much for being with us, Cesar. Thanks for joining us, audience. Please follow up. Please let other people know about the Growth Collective if you think it could be beneficial to any of your contacts out there in the go-to-market space. So have a great weekend, everybody.
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate you, Dan.
Yeah, for sure.